Welcome to the Bar Exam Toolbox podcast. Today we are talking about what to do during your final weekend of bar prep. Your Bar Exam Toolbox hosts are Allison Monahan and Lee Burgess, that's me. We are here to demystify the bar exam experience so you can study effectively, stay sane, and hopefully pass and move on with your life. We're the co-creators of the Law School Toolbox, the Bar Exam Toolbox, and the career-related website Career Dicta. Allison also runs the Girls Guide to Law School. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review on your favorite listening app and check out our sister podcast, the Law School Toolbox podcast. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach us via the contact form on barexamtoolbox.com, and we'd love to hear from you. And with that, let's get started.
Welcome back. Today we're running through some things you probably want to do during your final weekend of bar prep. Studying for the bar exam is like a marathon. You really need to taper off your training in the final days so that you can rest and restore energy. I mean, nobody who's training for a marathon is doing, say, a 20-mile run 2 days before, right?
No. Well, although I have not run a marathon. Have you run a marathon?
I have not. I did several triathlons.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They weren't necessary to taper, but
different skill set. I've done like a 13K or something like that.
Yeah, and you probably didn't run 10 miles the day before.
I did not, no.
So, yeah, I mean, people sometimes think like, oh, if I'm not studying up until the very last second, I'm guaranteed I'm not going to pass. Well, that's sort of ridiculous. You're probably setting yourself up for failure. Mm-hmm. So let's talk through the few days before the exam about what people need to be thinking about, what they need to be doing to make sure that when the exam day comes, you actually show up well-rested and ready to go.
Sounds good. So let's start with Saturday on your pre-bar exam weekend.
Wow, what a great weekend
I know, it's such a great weekend. The first thing I think people want to start doing if they haven't been doing it already is getting up at the time that you are going to get up on exam day.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think
if you're not a morning person,
right,
which I'm not.
Right, and you are exactly the type of person that I'm thinking about because you usually have to be at the exam center, eat something at the latest, fairly early. And if you're transporting yourself there, it could even be earlier. So if you're not someone who gets up at 6, like I do, not by choice because my children like to get up at 6. But if you aren't used to that, then that can be a pretty painful awakening. So just like with jet lag, you want to give yourself a few days to adjust.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It's basically exactly like giving yourself jet lag. Mm-hmm. So if you know you're someone who does not respond well to jet lag and is not a morning person, definitely start getting up early. I mean, maybe even before the Saturday before, but definitely by then.
Yeah.
Because that gives you a few days to shift your schedule.
Yeah. And some people end up changing locations or taking a plane and flying across country or,
right.
And also have to deal with jet lag. So if you know, let's say that you are going to be taking the New York bar and you live in California, you may want to start thinking about, whether you need to start shifting what time you go to bed even earlier before you fly out so that the jet lag is not that painful.
Yeah, and melatonin can be useful for that.
Oh, yes.
Do some research.
Yep. All right. The other thing I think you want to consider doing is studying in 3 or 3.5 hour blocks, which the 3.5 hour blocks are really for California folks, which is really how you will be doing the testing. And you want to get comfortable with this because you have to sit and focus for the solid amount of time without taking a bunch of breaks. Maybe you won't be able to even have water on the desk. You want to limit bathroom breaks. You want to think about what you've been eating. You really want to start mimicking it so you feel comfortable sitting in one place for 3 hours.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time. You sit down, you do your 100 MBE questions, and you think, oh, that was really horrible. And then you think to yourself, I'll have to do that twice on test day.
Exactly. Yeah.
So better that you've done it before. I made the mistake on the LSAT. I probably shouldn't say this, but I actually had not ever taken a full LSAT under test conditions. I'd taken, the different pieces.
Right.
And then when I went to the exam day, I ended up, I think half the questions I missed were in the last section because I was just so tired.
Yeah. You're just burned out.
Yeah, and also, they added, the extra questions and stuff. It was just a very different experience to sit there for several hours versus just doing each piece.
Yeah, I mean, we talk to a lot of folks who are unsuccessful who blame fatigue, day of fatigue. I think especially that second day, that afternoon session, it can be really taxing. And I think people underestimate how physically difficult it is to sit in one spot for 3 hours and just use your brain.
Yeah, and I think, too, you've got to make sure that you are comfortable switching topics. For example, if you're doing the MEE, you're going to have 3 hours, they're going to hand you 6 essays. And that can be a very different experience from sitting down and being like, oh, today I'm going to do a Civ Pro essay. Right. And today I'm going to do a torts essay, because nobody's going to tell you what they're about.
Right.
So you need that experience of getting, with our tutoring students, we call it the surprise package. And it just gets delivered to them and they have to sit down and do it. So you want to make sure that you've had that experience. And if you've never done back-to-back essays like that, you need to do them this weekend.
Yeah. And I think that if your bar review provider hasn't provided those for you, you can always, maybe find another bar prep friend and say, will you put together a packet for me and I'll put together a packet for you. So you do have that element of surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you could even, find and download a full exam and just do one from a few years ago. That's pretty much exactly what it will be like.
For sure. I think another interesting thing to think about is when you're going to eat lunch. You probably want to eat lunch around the same time that you're going to end up eating lunch during the test, and make sure that you're eating enough lunch. I think that this can be a problem for folks who are big snackers.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, because the bar doesn't really let you take snack breaks.
No, it definitely is a downside.
Or coffee breaks.
Yeah, don't try to sneak in your almonds.
Right. And you don't get your 2:00 latte.
Right. Yeah.
So it's bad. So you need to adjust yourself to match the schedule of the examiners. So if you, don't usually eat lunch at 12, but you've got to eat lunch at 12, make sure that you know what you need to eat to make it all the way till 4:30 or 5:00 or whenever you're going to be done. Because
that's a very long time.
That's a very long time.
And for a lot of people, I think if you eat a lot, then you get kind of drowsy. So you've got to sort of think about you're calibrating your caffeine intake because you don't want to have too much.
Right, your sugar intake. You don't want to have too much sugar, so you crash.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about, actually. You can try some stuff out this weekend.
You can.
See how it makes you feel.
Exactly.
See when you get hungry again.
Yeah, it's true. So the other thing you can do is do a test run to the exam site if you haven't already done it, to decide how long it's going to take you to get there, where you're going to park. Are there areas we were just trying to park before coming to this podcast, and Tuesdays are street cleaning days in this neighborhood, and
who knew?
And it will take you longer to park. So you want to make sure that where the bar exam is, that Tuesday isn't street cleaning day if you have a plan to street park in a neighborhood for free or something like that.
Right. And you definitely want to double check that that's feasible, so you're not worried about if your car has a ticket or if you have to run out during lunch and try to move your car. I would just really try to avoid any type of thing like that.
Yep. If you're taking public transit, make sure you know exactly what public transit you can take. This is always a big anxiety inducer for me because I feel like public transit is incredibly unreliable.
Yeah, it really is. You definitely want to have a backup plan, So in California, in the Bay Area, the bar is typically given in Oakland. And so you might think, I can just jump on BART from San Francisco. Ha ha.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't really rely on that because you don't really have another option.
Yeah, if you get stuck in the tunnel, there's no way out.
Right. And, if BART just stops running, that's the tunnel. I mean, at that point, are you going to take a bus or are you going to take an Uber? I actually took the ferry to my hotel because I thought it would be a nice experience, but I would not take the ferry an hour before the exam.
Yeah. So you really want to make sure that you understand and have, done your risk assessments, I guess, when it comes to public transportation.
Yeah. I mean, worst case, do you have a bike backup? Is there any way you could walk? Or are there people you can call to come and get you?
Right.
And in the winter, I mean, you could have snow and all kinds of things to deal with.
Oh, that's true. Other things you want to do is make sure you have all your registration materials, print or, download anything you need. Make sure if they've mailed you stuff, you have what you need. Make sure it's in some sort of Ziploc bag that you know what you can bring in the room and you have everything kind of organized. I wouldn't spend a lot of emotional energy being I wonder if it should be this Ziploc or that Ziploc or whatever.
Well, they're usually pretty specific,
too.
It's usually you get a gallon-sized clear Ziploc bag. These are the things that you can and cannot put in that bag.
Yep.
Beyond that, basically, don't put anything that could conceivably be in the list of things you are not allowed to bring, and then don't really worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. But to go ahead and, put that all together so you can grab and go and you're not looking for something at the last minute.
And definitely, I think the point about the registration materials, make sure that you know exactly what you have to show them. Do you have to bring ID? What type of ID?
Is your ID valid? Is it expired? The driver's license expiration dates, those can sneak up on people.
Yeah, exactly. If you're international, what do you have to show them? Do you need your passport? Maybe so. You just want to make sure that you've checked all the boxes on this so that you can just show up, send them, show them this piece of paper and your ID and your plastic bag and go sit down and not have any issues.
Exactly. You also want to confirm that your computer is good to go. So you want to turn off the automatic updates, make sure you've done all the testing, downloaded or uploaded everything that you need. Make sure that your power cord is working and all of that kind of stuff, because you really don't want last minute computer surprises.
No, and I think if there's any software, you need to have tested that, probably turn off any sort of automatic updates that sometimes can mess up the test software. I mean, presumably, if you're using your computer, there is some sort of testing software. So you want to be sure you know how to use that. Are you allowed to use spell check? How does that work? What kind of formatting options do you have? Because you don't really be spending time looking for like, how do I make it bold?
Right.
Like, you should already know that.
Right. Exactly. So from a study perspective, I think the thing to focus on is Saturday is some time to focus on the weak areas of heavily tested law. So we really believe that the best use of your time is to be reviewing stuff that is likely to show up on the test.
Right.
And you basically need to know everything that is likely to show up on the test. So if it's heavily tested, know it. And if you don't know it, create a list and start drilling that material this weekend, because I think these last few days are not about, a minor nuance that you won't know. It's, do you know the solid core amount of law that is likely to show up between the MBE and the MEE?
Right, exactly. And this varies by the test. So, California tests different things than the MEE essays do.
Right.
So if you're in California and you're listening to this, you probably need to make sure you know professional responsibility. Take this as a perfect public service announcement from someone who did not understand that was actually on the exam. It will be tested, I guarantee you.
Yep.
I think that's, in bar world, about the closest to a guarantee that we ever get.
Yeah, I think that's true.
It is literally on something like 95% of the exams.
Yeah. So and not even just using the professional responsibility example. It's not even just professional responsibility. In the realm of professional responsibility, there are rules that you will absolutely see. Like, you will see conflicts of interest. You will see
and they're going to ask you
loyalty
about California versus the federal.
Right. And so, or the ABA.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But this idea that, you shouldn't be surprised and be like, oh, that conflicts of interest.
Who knew they were going to ask about that?
I mean, there are statistics on that. We have, you can find frequency analyses for free on smartbarprep.com. We have this information as part of our Brainy Bar Bank tool. I mean, there's no secret what this information is. So you just need to know it. Don't be surprised by something that basically over history they've already told you is going to show up on the test.
Yeah, and same thing with if you're taking the UBE, probably want to look at CivPro.
Yeah.
Most heavily tested topic on the essays. Not quite as much of a guarantee as professional responsibility, but most likely going to make an appearance.
Yeah.
What do you think about predictions? Should people be spending time this weekend, only studying what some random website tells them is going to be on the exam?
I really, really, really don't like predictions, because I have talked to many people who have gambled on predictions and been wrong. I've heard predictions be incredibly wrong. Sometimes they're right, and that's, buoy for them.
Sometimes they're like professional responsibility going to be on your test.
I make that prediction every single time. I think that I'm not a gambling person myself. Like, I go to Vegas and I'd rather go shopping than give my money to casinos, because I don't particularly like to gamble. So I would much rather play the numbers. And so for me, I've definitely had students say, oh, well, I didn't study evidence because they'd already just tested evidence and they tested it again. How did they do that?
Evidence is on the MBE. You should have studied it.
Well, right.
Next.
Yeah, it's one is on the MBE, and two, there are no rules that say that just because they've tested it once, they cannot
never
test it again. And I think that there's this comfort that people get from saying that they can game the system. I think the reality is you can't game this test. You can, use statistics of what we know about how they test certain topics and know what you'll likely be able to see, but they're also going to throw on some stuff in there that's weird, that maybe isn't even in your Barbary book. I mean, this happens every single year. So they throw some curveball, and so that's not going to be on the prediction. So I am one of those people who's like, hey, let's just learn everything that we think has a high likelihood of being on the test, and then some stuff on top of that will be gravy, and then I will know enough about how to deal with questions that I don't have any idea what the answer is, because I'll have a plan for that, and then you see where the chips fall.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in principle. I think it's worth, for me, out of curiosity, I might look at them and make sure there's nothing on there where I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that might be on the exam. But beyond that, I definitely would not only study off of those lists, which is what some people do the last weekend. And I think that is not the best approach.
Yeah. I mean, the prediction said that remedies would not be on my bar exam, and it was question number 4. And a lot of people chose not to study it.
Well, so many remedies, you're like, that's probably going to show up someplace.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do damages. Yeah. You probably need to know the basics of this at least.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is just being kind of sensible too.
Yep. So if we're thinking about kind of a good 6-hour study schedule, which I think 6 hours for this Saturday, 6 to 8 hours max is a good target, is pretty much, 30 to 40% of your time memorizing, and the rest of it needs to be practice. So you're really doing practice. I recommend you do practice on those heavily tested essays and topics covered in those essays. And I think it's very important not to study super late. We already talked about getting up and, getting moving early in the morning. And I think you need to also be willing to shut it down in the evening so you can get to bed at a good time and try and get a good night's rest, because studying late at night and being on your phone and being on your computer, it doesn't lead to good sleep.
No, I think Saturday is a good night to get some extra sleep, maybe, watch some funny movie or something, and go to bed early. And then get up at your scheduled time on Sunday.
Exactly. So on Sunday, other than doing a little studying, which we'll talk about in a minute, we think it's also a good idea to start packing, because if you're going to stay at a hotel, you want to make sure you have what you need. You also want to call the hotel and confirm your reservation. And I have had students who've called the hotel and they don't know who they're talking to because the reservation didn't show up.
Oh, no.
Oops.
Because those hotels are probably pretty crowded.
Yeah. So you definitely want to have your confirmation. When you talk to the hotel, you can also request a low floor room. A lot of people like that. So if it's a tall hotel, they don't have to wait so long for the elevators. And you may also want to see if it's possible to get a mini fridge so you can keep food in your room.
Right.
Another option is whether or not you want a late checkout on the second day to see if you can stay until after the test, so you don't have to pack up and check out of your room on Wednesday. I think for a lot of people that gives them a place to go eat lunch on Wednesday, which is very nice. So they may charge you a small fee, but in the grand scheme of bar world, it may be totally worth it.
Paying for one extra night might not be the worst idea if you really want that. Yeah, because a lot of these hotels, if they're near a convention center or something, where the bar is happening and it's hundreds or even thousands of people, they're going to be pretty booked up, and it's going to be pretty crazy that last morning if you're trying to leave luggage at the front desk and you're stressed out and there are hundreds of other people trying to leave their luggage. Anything you can do to just plan ahead and avoid these situations so that you go in the right state of mind is really going to be to your benefit.
Yep.
Because you don't want to show up stressed out, running late, wondering if your luggage is going to be okay. It's well worth it just to have to pay a little bit of extra money to get late checkout or even an extra night, or figure out some other plan, like you're going to put yourself in your car or whatever.
Right. If you are staying at home, you want to make sure you've done all your laundry and your grocery shopping and things like that, so that your house is set up. Maybe you're even going to, prep some foods. I'm big into, I've been having to pack lunches for my son. So I've been a lot into weekend, how do I make my life easier? And, now my whole rule is never cut up one carrot, always cut up a bunch of carrots. And then you put them in a canning jar full of water, and then you just grab carrots and then you cut up a whole thing of celery, and then you cut up a whole pepper, and you never cut up one thing. You cut up, a huge thing of watermelon and put it in a big container. So I could also see, especially if you're going to stay at home, or even if you're going to stay somewhere where you're taking food with you, that you can spend some time doing a little bit of prep to make things easy for yourself, because you want to make all the other stuff outside the test very easy, because you're very fatigued at the end of the days.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you probably won't even think about what you're going to eat when you come back. So you need to go ahead and plan ahead for your dinner, so that first day when you roll back into your house and you're so exhausted and you still have another day to go, you're not sitting there thinking ugh, what am I going to eat? And you order out pizza or whatever.
Yeah, and then you feel feel terrible.
Your future self will thank you for thinking ahead about what you're going to eat that first night. And you can just roll in and be like, oh, I just have to heat this up. It's going to be delicious. And then I can relax and then go to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, you could, warm up the Instapot over the weekend, put some stuff in there, have your fridge stocked with a few different great meals, even stuff for lunches. If you're packing in your lunch for the bar, it's not going to make your stomach upset. It's good stuff.
Yeah, you're not going to get food poisoning from some dodgy restaurant.
Right.
It happens.
Yeah. You also want to think about what you're going to take into the exam room. We talked about getting your ticket and registration stuff together, but you also, they're going to have a list of things you can bring. Don't bring everything on the list. Just bring what you need.
You need to have, your, not earphones, what are those things called? Earplugs.
Earplugs, yeah.
Your earplugs, whatever they're allowed to bring in terms of pencil, pen, highlighter.
Oh, Advil. Sometimes you're allowed to bring things like Advil or Tylenol.
I definitely needed that the first bar I took when we had to handwrite, which was awful. And if you are going to handwrite, you really need to think about what kind of pen you're going to bring.
That's true.
That's critical. In fact, even if you're not planning to handwrite, you still ought to have a pen you can write with just in case something happens to your computer, because you don't want to be writing with a pencil.
No.
So everyone please put in some sort of reasonable pen that you could write for hours with.
How about two?
Several.
Two reasonable pens.
Yeah. Several in case they run out of ink.
Yep. So from a studying perspective, again, I think, if you're studying, let's say like 6 hours or so max this day, you want to, again, continue to chip away at the law that you're still struggling with that is heavily tested. Again, don't get too caught up in things like predictions because they can be very wrong. So stick to the statistics and make sure that you're testing what's heavily tested on the MBE and on the essays. I think the other thing you want to think about is to not play mind games with yourself. I think this is where kind of quizzing yourself on MBE questions can start getting a little toxic because you get nervous and then maybe you don't have a great 30 question set and then you start to convince yourself you're going to fail. I mean, this is very easy to do. So you want to be kind to yourself. And if you're feeling like you're getting anxious, maybe it's not a great time to quiz yourself on MBE questions, that it's a better idea to just, do some studying, maybe if essays are less anxiety inducing. But, this isn't where like big gains are going to be made.
No, I feel like this is a point where, you might want to just sit down and rewrite some heavily tested rule statements, stuff you feel like fairly confident about. I mean,
your attack plans.
Yeah, like if you can't do that at this point, you probably do have cause for concern.
Yeah.
So I would say that's something that you could actually spend some time focusing on is how am I memorizing and able to write down these attack plans? Do I know the law by element? Those sort of things. But hopefully you've been doing this all along and this is not a new idea.
Yep. All right. Then comes Monday. Monday. So the bar exam is the next day. So the first thing you want to have is a set time when you're going to stop studying.
Right.
And just pick it. Noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I would say no later than 3 o'clock. But you just cut yourself off. Doesn't matter how you feel. Just put the books down. Walk away. Very important. You want to spend a little time that morning continuing to check off your list of law that you're still struggling with. Really be careful about doing lots of, essay questions or MBE sets. I don't think that's the best use of your time. I think you just want to drill the law because you can easily get into a headspace that, you feel like you don't know what's going on or yada, yada.
This is not the time to demoralize yourself.
No. This is also the day that you want to travel where you're going. If you're going to be transporting yourself, you might need to go to the grocery store, get the food that you need to stock your hotel room. You can always, if you can't get a mini fridge, you can do ice chests. Didn't you have a great Burning Man trick about ice?
Oh, yeah. So with your ice chest, and this is a great one for a hotel because they always have an endless supply of ice, but it's way better not just to dump the ice into your cooler because then it melts. You've got a mess to deal with, like the labels start peeling off of things. Trust me, it's not a good scene. However, if you take some big Ziploc bags and put your ice in that, then when it melts, all you have is a Ziploc bag full of water that you pour into the sink.
Magic.
Yeah, it really is life-changing.
Yeah.
So you could easily have, 2 or 3 days worth of supplies that you keep perfectly cold, perfectly nice, no problems. Your iced coffee can be in there, whatever it is. And then you don't really have to worry so much about, am I going to be able to find something that's edible in this place that I'm taking the exam?
So true. So definitely thinking ahead there, but making it work for you is very important. And
some of us are more picky than others, let's be honest.
That's true. But I make my own iced coffee now or my own cold press. I guess it's cold brew, not cold press. But you get used to the caffeine in your own coffee, right. And then you go get somebody else's coffee and it can be like more acidic and not sit as well, make you feel jittery.
Yeah, I feel like if you've got a plan dialed in, just go with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Figure out a way to keep that plan for the bar exam.
Right.
So that you're not, trying to go to like the local Subway because that's the only vegetarian option, which is not going to hold you for 4 hours.
Right, exactly. You also want to have a good plan to distract yourself. So going out to a movie or going to dinner with a friend, maybe somebody who's not sitting for the test so they can't talk to you about the test. My now husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, we went to Mamma Mia, which was like not the best movie ever, but we were just burning hours. It was just kind of like, what are we going to do until it's time to go to bed? But you do want to make sure that, you're doing something to pass the time.
Yeah, one thing I did, I don't think I did on the Monday, but maybe on like the Saturday or Sunday before one of the exams was I got a massage.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And that was really great because, you're physically stressed out. You've been sitting for a long time, just having, I probably wouldn't do it on Monday, but like, Saturday or Sunday, great time to take a few hours, get a massage, get physically ready to go.
That's a good point. Get some of the tension out, sleep a little bit better.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the other thing you want to think about on Monday is don't sleep in. Get up early because you're going to have to get up early at Tuesday, and you don't want to make it so you cannot like go to bed that night. Have a similar breakfast as you're going to on exam day to make sure you have your food down. And, think about, how you are going to bed.
Yeah, I was saying this is not the time to start experimenting with like sleeping pills and things.
No.
I mean, if you need them, take them. But if you've never taken Ambien before, I would not recommend doing it the night before the bar exam because you just don't know how you're going to react to it.
Yeah, you also might want to try and eat dinner a little earlier because if you have trouble going to bed early, it can be harder to go to bed if you have a super full stomach. So you might want to, just go to a 6 o'clock dinner and not an 8 o'clock dinner if you're trying to go to bed by 10.
Yeah, exactly. And don't read anything stressful.
No.
I know certain books and things. I can feel. Sometimes you'll feel you're getting to a point you're like, oh, this is getting ready to take a very dark turn.
This happened to me in my hotel room. I was reading this book that I thought was going to be like a very fluffy, like women-centric, friends, knitting circle, whatever. And then I could tell
like somebody's going to die.
Somebody's going to get cancer. And they did. And I literally shut the book and I was like, I will not read about cancer during the bar exam. I'm over it.
I remember, one of the days, because at that time California was still 3 days. They had 2 nights to kill.
Which was
so brutal.
Long nights.
And I think it was the second night. I was just like, oh, I'm so tired. I can't go to bed at like 7 or whatever it is because I'll wake up at 2 a.m. And so, I was flipping channels and thank goodness Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle was on TV. And I was just like, oh, this is exactly what I need to watch right now.
Yep.
Something like completely just entertaining.
Completely entertaining.
So plan ahead, have something entertaining.
Exactly. Like download some favorite reality TV shows or whatever it is that like you find light, and distracting.
Yeah. So, basically I think this is the weekend to kind of, get your ducks in a row, make sure you're not going to have problems when you show up to the exam. You also want to know how to upload your answers because that's something you don't want to be like stressing out about at the last minute. So you just kind of check these boxes and then look at your heavily tested rules, make sure you're pretty solid on those. And then it's really just about keeping your head in the game and not having a total meltdown.
Yep. One thing for folks who may get accommodations, if you're taking the exam like at a hotel or maybe you have a specific room set up, oftentimes there are rules that you have to like check in the day before because apparently some people don't show up to the test. Like a high number of folks don't show up to the test. Yeah, it was very shocking. One of my students gave me that statistic once. But you end up needing to check in. Sometimes you have to develop the schedule for when you're going to take the lunch break if you're sharing a room with someone else. But anyway, make sure that if you do get accommodations, you've read all the materials that the bar has given you. And if you do need to do anything like the day before the test, that also gets done.
Well, and I would say if you are getting any type of accommodations, you want to make sure you have that documentation with you in case there are any issues about what you should be getting so that, again, you're not arguing, well, I know they sent me this. You just have everything that was sent to you printed out, ready to go, where it's like, well, it says right here that this is what I'm supposed to get. So let's figure out how to get me that.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think with that, we are out of time, but good luck to everybody who's getting ready to sit for the bar exam.
Good luck. Just remember, it'll be over in a few days.
Exactly. So light at the end of the tunnel.
Head in the game. Keep going.
I want to take a second to remind you to check out our blog at barexamtoolbox.com, which is full of helpful tips to help you prepare and stay sane as you study for the bar exam. We even have packing lists, I believe, on there, if you don't know.
Pretty sure we do.
We do.
We even have like how to find a last minute hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Because one of our tutors, I think, had to do that.
Yep. So you can also find information on our website about our courses, tools, and one-on-one tutoring programs to support you as you study for the UBE or California bar exam. If you enjoyed this episode of the Bar Exam Toolbox podcast, please take a second to leave a review and rating on your favorite listening app. We'd really appreciate it. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. If you're still in law school, you might also like to check out our popular Law School Toolbox podcast as well. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Allison at lee@barexamtoolbox.com or allison@barexamtoolbox.com, or you can always contact us via our website contact form at barexamtoolbox.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.